In the process of getting to know these two young men, I sent them friend requests on Facebook. It seemed like the logical thing to do, right? And I wasn't at all surprised to see that we had mutual friends. They had been hanging around church for about a month, so I assumed that Dr. Barton or some other member of the choir had befriended them. And that did turn out to be true for one of them, for the older of the two gentlemen who was with us for a month. But when I clicked on the mutual friends link for the younger gentleman, the two people I saw there were John and Lisa, an old college buddy of my husband's and his lovely wife. My brain exploded briefly while I processed this new information, and I quickly gave up on calculating the odds of such an occurrence. It just seemed too coincidental. Yet there it was. They were connected through a church in Cadillac, where our young man had lived with his adoptive parents. Do you ever have one of those moments where you feel like the universe might be trying to tell you something? Yeah, this was one of those moments, and a voice in my head whispered, "Yes." Later on, when I had time to think about it, I remembered a conversation that I had with John and Lisa at one of our parties about 4 years ago. They were telling me about this young man they knew from their youth group who had been kicked out of his house by his adoptive parents, not entirely because of the trouble he'd been in, and there had been some trouble, but for declaring himself a pagan and a practicing Wiccan. He was 15 at the time, and he'd been with them for 6 years. But that was the final straw for the adoptive parents, and they were done. He was living in a group home, and they had no plans to let him come back. I remembered that conversation and how concerned I felt for this young man with no family. And I wondered what would happen to him when he aged out of the foster care system and the group home system. It's not like you just stop needing parents when you turn 18. 4 years later, I met this handsome, articulate 19-year-old, and I had no idea he was the same child. But when I figured that out, I have to admit, it really did feel like a vote of confidence from the universe. After 9 months of working with him on getting his life back together, I can tell you that I am now intimately acquainted with what happens to young people who age out of the system, and it is not pretty. It's estimated that we have around 6,200 homeless youth right here in Kent County right now. 6,200. And each year, over 1,000 children are reported as runaways. Community resources for these young people are slim, jobs are scarce, and as you all know, the competition for them is fierce. Being a card-carrying, bleeding heart liberal, homelessness has always bothered me, and now it bothers me even more. I hear people complaining all the time about these lazy homeless people, demanding to know why they don't just get a job. I'm sorry, but how do you get a job when your wallet's been stolen, your birth certificate is lost, and you have no identification? How do you even prove who you are? How do you get a job when you have no address to put down on an application? No clean clothes to wear to an interview, no place to take a shower, and certainly no money for a haircut. So this journey is challenging at times and fraught with peril, but it also serves as a serendipitous and poignant reminder of how close we all are, not just to the Kevin Bacons and Amy Pohlers of the world, but to the homeless youth in our own community, to our neighbors, and the checkout clerk at Meijer, to the Amanda Berries and the Charles Ramseys of the world, and to each other. Now, I'm not suggesting you all run out and adopt a homeless person like I did, but I often think about that quote from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. 99.9% of all human DNA is identical. All of our apparent differences in height, skin, hair, eyes, and gender are all contained in 0.1% of our DNA. That's 0.1% for you math people. Renowned astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson reminds us that we are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. So I'm not just making this theory up. We really are all connected, whether we like it or not. But maybe it was Dustin Hoffman's character, Bernard, who states my case most succinctly in the movie I Heart Huckabees, when he says, "Everything is connected, and everything matters. There is not an atom in our bodies that has not been forged in the furnace of the sun." It's a continual challenge to honor these connections, to drop our guard and let each other in, to not let our lives be led by fear. Listen to that little voice that says yes, and keep an open heart, my friends. Miracles happen every day. Thank you.